Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Miscellaneous Gab, and on this channel, we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about business, travel, lifestyle, the Hunger Games, culture, and today we're talking about the 23 books that I read in 2023. I actually read 24 books in 2023, but I thought this sounded better for the title. My New Year's resolution of 2023 was to read 2 books per month. I am not somebody who follows book trends. I'm not somebody who reads the bestseller, the Colleen Hoovers of the world. I kind of read whatever I'm feeling, whatever my fancy takes me. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to follow a certain genre. I would say I normally oscillate between some sort of fiction genre. 2022, it was all about sci-fi. It was all about The Expanse. 2023, my fiction of choice was either dystopic teen, young adult, but mostly high fantasy, as well as always a balance between some business books, some personal development, and just some general learning. Hey, I want to learn something. Let me pick up a book instead of watching a YouTube video about it. I do that sometimes. I am going to just tell you briefly about them. There will be no spoilers. I thought about giving them a rating, but I feel like ratings just kind of get repetitive after a while. I'm going through 23 books. I don't want to tell you 23 different ratings, all of which will be about a 7 to 10 because I don't really finish reading books that I hate. Life is too short. We don't have a lot of time on our hands. So first and foremost, I'm going to start off with my fiction books. Like I said, most of the books that I read this year were in the fantasy genre. I really got into the fantasy category this year. I'd never been really a fantasy book reader other than the good old Harry Potter, which I am thinking about making a ton of videos about Harry Potter books. So if that's of interest of you, comment below so that I will take the time to do it. I'm thinking of making a video called What is the Worst Harry Potter Movie and Why is it The Half-Blood Prince? First fiction trilogy that I read in 2023 was the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. These were my first introductory books to Brandon Sanderson, and I absolutely loved the Mistborn series. There are 3 books in the Mistborn series: Final Empire, Hero of Ages, and Well of Ascension. So this is a fantasy book. It's a great world building effort, and it involves its own unique magic system in which metals give you certain either physical or mental powers. And there are people who can master one element, one metal very, very well, or the very rare kind who can master all of the elements. So I loved this because it wasn't too hard to wrap your head around. I was obsessed. I could not put them down. And the good thing about these, as opposed to the other Brandon Sanderson novels I'll get into, is they're not too long. So it doesn't take you 50 years to get through them. I definitely recommend the Mistborn, whether you're a fantasy lover or you're just looking to get into the fantasy genre. Going off of that, I was so obsessed with fantasy and Brandon Sanderson that I immediately dived into the Stormlight archives. There are currently 4 books out. Currently working on the 5th one, but there are 4 books out. So the first book, these books are long. They're like the crunchiest of crunchy fantasy, high fantasy, very intricate worlds, intricate histories, intricate characters, etc. And it takes a lot of effort to get into them and remember them. Now, the first book was great. The second book was fantastic. Words of Radiance, fantastic. The third book was where I kind of started to really struggle to get through. And the 4th book was really disappointing to me. Honestly, I'm not looking forward to really picking up the 5th book. I'm sure I will to get some closure, but I just wanted to be honest with you. I read Children of Time and Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is back into the sci-fi realm. This is kind of this really interesting concept of human beings at the end of the world are trying to drop the sentient gene down onto a exoplanet, a barrel of monkeys, to see if they can kind of become humans or follow the same trajectory. Something goes wrong and that gene hits a bunch of spiders. That's all I'll say about it. The first book was so fascinating. I had never read a book like that because every chapter it alternates actually from the perspective of the spider to the perspective of humans that are still kind of that last voyage of humans that are floating endlessly through space. Loved that. Second book, Children of Ruin. I really couldn't get through that because I felt like it was just a less successful copy of the first one. There is a 3rd book as well, Children of Memory, which I didn't bother to start because I was pretty disappointed in the 2nd book. The next fiction book I read was called The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. This was a great book, kind of a historical fiction, a throwback in the 1950s in India, in Jaipur. I really loved this book. It is also part of a trilogy. I think it works as a standalone, so I just read this. Super strong female lead. It gives you a super interesting look into what India was like at that time. So if historical fiction is your thing, I would totally recommend The Henna Artist. It was a very beautiful and emotional journey. The last grouping from my fiction is, of course, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I've made 2 videos on that. So if you haven't checked that out, what are you doing? Go watch them right now. And I read that, and then that made me want to go back and read the first 3 Hunger Games, the OG Hunger Games trilogy, which, believe it or not, I had never read before. So what a treat for me, because I got to read all 4 of those books in 2023. I was obsessed with the original Hunger Games books. I probably finished all 3 within a few weeks, maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks. It was unhealthy at some point. I didn't want to do anything else. I really want to make a bunch of videos on Katniss as a character, books versus movies, now that I've actually read the source material. If that's of interest of you, if you want to see more Hunger Games analysis movies, videos from me, comment below and let me know, because if you want to, I will gladly make them. Even if one person wants me to, I will gladly make them. That closes the chapter, no pun intended, on my fiction era of the year. I like to balance that with either business, personal development. I read in this category was called The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Caban. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. This was a really great book, a how-to guide on how to increase your personal magnetism, on how to increase your charisma. And she's someone who's worked with top executives, people from all different backgrounds, shy people, not shy people, on how to increase from a strategic standpoint your personal magnetism. Actually, the best leaders in the world have kind of a strategy behind how they present themselves. It's not just accidental. So check that out if that's up your alley. Next book I read in the personal development realm was called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. He's the same author of The Untethered Soul, which is his more popular book. This book was really good. It was a great read. However, I didn't find it as applicable to my life. Yes, it's really good to surrender. This man's journey is like literally so different from my own that I can't really think about how I would make that my life, nor do I really want to, but really great book on like how to surrender, how to just not put up this internal resistance to the things unfolding around you. So a great reminder. I'm convinced that a lot of self-help and self-development books all say the same thing in different ways. It just depends on when you read them in your life. So that's why I try to cushion self-development with a lot of other books, because I know I've read those same principles and ideas before. It's just about that reminder or the kick in the butt when you need it. Along those same lines, I read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And again, this was nothing mind-blowing. This was nothing new, but it was a great reminder because it had been a while since I'd read any sort of money mindset, personal finance book. And this was a great read to get me in the mindset of, hey, I want this to be a successful year for me financially. And what do I need to switch on in my brain? So similar to the Charisma Myth, it helps you switch on those switches, because we can fall out of it, right? We can fall into our more creative energy or our lazy girl era or whatever era that we're in. But I wanted to be in my financial success era. So it was just a great reminder of like, hey, here's how really successful people think, tips and tricks, great refresh. Next book I read that to teach myself something was called Wine Simple by Aldo Somm. Now, this was a really fascinating book, very easy to follow for wine and novices like myself. Even though I've been trying to learn about wine for what feels like literal eons, this book taught me that I still don't know shit. I feel like I could read 500 more books and still not know anything about wine. Warning about this book, it will make you want to spend a lot of money on wine to try wine. Next book I read for personal development was called Getting the Love You Want. This was by Helen Hunt and Harville Hendrix. They're a married couple. While this book is a lot about relationships, I think anybody should read it, whether you're in a relationship or you're single, because it helps you identify your background, why your background might inform your current romantic relationships, as well as what kind of expectations you might be bringing into your current romantic relationships. It has a ton of exercises, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're single. I think this is a really great, like, getting to know yourself and getting to know yourself in relationships. This book I read was Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari. I read Sapiens several years ago and absolutely loved it. It was mind-blowing. I was obsessed. I was expecting a similar bit of obsession from this book, but I just didn't get that. And I think it's because I read it too late. This book was written in 2016 and the world has changed like a lot since 2016. Some of this just didn't feel as mind-blowing as it was reported to be because things have already happened or they haven't happened. happened or they've happened differently. You could take it or leave it, but I do appreciate the author and I appreciate the amount of research he does. Next book that I read was another business book. I'm a business owner. When I read a business book, I study it, I take notes, I highlight, I type out all my highlights because it's really important for me to absorb the information and put it in practice. I read $100 Million Offer by Alex Hormozi. I loved the way that this was presented. I know he has like broken the internet as the next guru of whatever. I'm not convinced that he is somewhat of a scammer. Come at me with this in certain areas, or maybe is not quite as successful as portrayed. However, that aside, I just want to say that so you know I'm not the like fanboy, fan bro of Alex Hormozi where I like worship and drench myself with every word that he's ever said ever. But I do think this book was a really great read for business owners, for anyone selling anything, if you actually take the principles, take the time to study them and put them into practice. So I did appreciate the book. Again, it was nothing new, nothing revelatory, but the way it's packaged and presented makes it really easy for you to follow that framework and get yourself in that mindset. So the next book I read within this realm was called The Courage to Be Disliked. That was written by Fumitake Koga and Ichiro Kishimi. Apologize for any mispronunciations. I am truly sorry. This book was great. It's been really making its round. I've seen a lot of people have read it. A lot of people have said this book was completely life-changing and mind-blowing. Now, The Courage to Be Disliked wasn't exactly as the title suggests. I thought it was literally going to be a how-to guide on how to stop being a people pleaser and how to fully embrace being disliked, which I was very excited to read. Now, that definitely there definitely was a portion covering that, but it was a very unique perspective on Adlerian psychology, which is something you don't hear about very often. Normally you hear about like Jungian psychology, Freud. This had the very interesting take that how you feel is that a lot of your struggles in life are interpersonal problems that are created by you. It's a very empowering book in the sense that it gives you a lot of agency in your life and your own problems. So if anything, this helped me when I'm getting angry, when something's not going right, when I'm overthinking something. I start to think about, hey, this is my choice. I 100% have control over this. And I think that is a wonderful reminder for anybody out there. The last book I finished is a book I've been trying to get through for the past several years called Super Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. I originally picked up this book because it was like Elon Musk read this and said that this is the scariest book he's ever read in his life. And even though it was written several years ago before the latest AI rollout, it still gave some pretty interesting but very technical analyses on kind of the pathways and the hypothetical situations and the dangers that could lead to an AI takeover, enslaving of the human race, or even just AI getting out of control. So it is a bit of a scary read. However, it is a grueling read to get through. This may have been a book that may have been a better YouTube video or abridged version, but the too long don't read version of that is that we are probably screwed. So enjoy life while you can. Anyway, that is my book review list for 2023. Overall, just kind of a smorgasbord of reads. I pretty much enjoyed reading everything that I read, and I'm definitely on track to 2 books a month this year. I can already feel that I'm entering a different era in my fiction. So far in 2024, I have read Circe and Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Those books have been absolutely incredible and amazing, and I cried. So I feel like I'm slipping into a Greek mythology era, potentially a thriller spy era, but I have a couple good books lined up on the docket. So if you have any recommendations, drop them below and let me know. Also in 2023, it's pretty par for the course, but I've reread Harry Potter 4, 5, and 6 and 7, which I pretty much do every year because I actually can't fall asleep at night unless I listen to an audiobook. It's a habit I've been trying to break since the tender age of 9, but I think it's just part of my personality at this point, and I'm okay with it. I've learned to accept who I am as a person, and that's just how I am always going to be. I never count that towards my book list because I've read all those books dozens of times, but I think because my sister and I are very obsessed with the Potter books that we might start making some videos on them. So if you are looking for some juicy, fresh takes on the Potter universe, if it's been a while, if you want to relive those glory days without TikTok and cell phones, if you want to enter the wizarding world once more, where you still had that glimmer of hope that that letter would come for you on your 11th birthday, even when my mom threw me a surprise birthday party, magician birthday party at the age of 11, and I still didn't get my Hogwarts letter. I still like to talk about this stuff. So if you like to talk about it too, just let me know. Either way, thanks for watching. Comment below if you read any of those books and what you thought of them, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.